session, and we are going to be blessed by Professor Parvez Talib साहब. बहुत बड़े हमदर्द हैं मेरे ख्याल से almost 2.5 decades से सर की blessings हैं मेरे साथ. Professor Talib is an alumni of AMU and holds an MBA and PhD degree with JRF in Business Administration in the area of stress management. I hope you guys are being pulled from every direction. So how to manage the stress, सर की क्लास में ये देखेंगे. और सुबह you have been playing with the numbers से थोड़ी राहत मिलेगी इस वाली क्लास में. मेरी कोशिश यही रही है कि एक वक्त थोड़ा टाइट हो तो दूसरी वक्त you will feel in comfort zone. So he has more than 30 years of extensive teaching experience. He specializes in the domain of stress management, strategy, entrepreneurship, and human resource management. Professor has proficiently shoulders the responsibility of director of the coaching and guidance center of AMU. He has a keen interest in training, counseling, and guidance, guiding students, young teachers, and corporate professionals in communication skills and personality development. He has numerous publications in national and international journals, and to date he has guided over 30 plus PhD students. Professor Talib has skillfully coordinated a prestigious project of management complex. आप देखेंगे बहुत खूबसूरत कैंपस है जब हम आपको घुमाएंगे. Worth more than 15 crores का projects and built through the donor support. He has also served as a Dean of the Faculty of Management Studies for 2 years and chairpersonship of the Department of Business Administration for 3 consecutive years. Professor Talib is involved in the department's entrepreneurship related initiatives and has made a great contribution to the institution think tank. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us, and we are honored that you gave us the time, sir. Please, sir, memento, sir. Sir, ये वाली तस्वीर हमसे कहा गया है. आइए सर. आप बीच में आइए. ICSSR को यही चाहिए. Thank you, sir. आपके हवाले सर. थैंक यू. ये भी तस्वीर उन्होंने मांगी है.
एक इंस्ट्रक्शन नसीम साहब का बड़ा सख्त है कि मुझे इस माइक से इधर उधर नहीं जाना है. एज इट
Sorry, sir. We are sharing the recordings at the YouTube and different mode of.
Okay, I can understand.
So ये सारी चीजें चल रही हैं सर.
That's right.
सर ये लखनऊ वाले जो प्रोफेसर साहब ने मुझे ट्रेन में छोड़ना होगा.
Okay. Am I audible? Because as a teacher I feel like moving and then interacting. चलिए हमारे डॉक्टर खान चले गए. Thanks to him for his kind introduction, and I was there in the inaugural, so I have a feel of the group, the people from all over India. So we are interacting with Pan India audience. Is that so? And some from very remote districts, places as well, down south also. Very good. But in terms of subject, I have a feel. Which of the subject? Education, psychology, management also? Mass communication. Okay. So although my own personal experience has been more, I'm very sorry. My own personal experience has been in the management field, but also the research experience of one of my classmate, former classmate. She has the background of history. This stage I was doing a MA in history, and then she was my she was my classmate, and then I'll draw upon from her experience also. So first, actually, my session will have three parts. One, I'll share my own research journey, how it has evolved. Then I'll share the journey of this lady I'm talking about, Professor Saikia. And then we will try to draw upon some lessons from that. So what kind of journey, because you are at a stage of life where you can, craft your own journey. So maybe you have some lessons from these two journeys which I'll share. First, my attempt would be कि मैं आप बीती को जगबीती बनाने की कोशिश करूँगा. एक बात और मैं पूछना चाहता था, स्पेशली डाउन साउथ, या इफ़ आई यूज़ हिंदुस्तानी हेयर एंड देयर विल दैट मेक ए डिफरेंस, या चल जाएगा? कैन यू फॉलो? यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू फॉलो. तो यानी वी कैन, you will bear with my core ideas in English only. Okay, so that's a promise. So let me start with my own journey, which is not a very pleasant one. I don't want to scare you, but I took 11 years to complete my PhD. So the first shocking thing listening to. And during these 11 years, I delved into 4 topics of research. This journey started in 1987 when I completed my MBA, qualified JRF, and then got into PhD. You might be quizzed why after MBA research. JRF is a good route. You know, you can be financially at least secure, and time you can pursue both the goals. Primary goal was prelims in 1988. I was writing my mains. I was preparing to write my as in life propped up teaching position, and I applied for it. Other research scholars being given an. So my research journey, which started in technical terms in 1987, it I was more than involved in research. Yes. अब हम लोग क्योंकि मिक्स ग्रुप है, आई नीड टू एक्सप्लेन. देखिए एक इशू है हमारे मैनेजमेंट इम्पोर्टेंट है. You have steel which makes steel, but you have ITC also, which is into hotels, which is into cigarettes and all that. Very diversified. So my first topic was around this. Is non-diversification a good strategy or diversification a good strategy? And I prepared it under one of our very distinguished professor to be one of the authority in strategic management. So I pursued that topic. I had promised to him that I'll balance both things. service my research. I got into teaching, so I was more into teaching. So, but I did, but and to IIM Ahmedabad by university on a teachers training program for 1 year. Let me try. So I was then sent to IIM Ahmedabad, and there, acha, aap log now you are fortunate, you can get access to all kind of, you know, literature, research literature on a click of a button. हम लोग के वक्त में when we used to do research, it was more like, physical search, which I went with to Ahmedabad, that I'll get all the relevant information from. They have a beautiful library, huge library. So I said I'll collect my literature there. अब वहाँ जब literature search कर रहे थे, then I located that there was a study which was already conducted. I was thinking of a sample of 200 companies. This fellow who has done this research, he was in RBI, a senior manager in RBI. So he had already, covered a sample of 2,000 companies. So there was no point, isn't it, in rediscovering the wheel. So I lost him in this topic. It was not worth it actually. Then I was drawn into the life of IIM Ahmedabad. Some of the teachers were wonderful. One of them was Pramod Kumar. So Pramod Kumar Verma, he became a bit close to me, and he desired that at that point of time they had created a group called Industry Policy Management Group. And he said, why don't you work for this group? And he said, can you get leave, paid leave? I said, yes, we have a provision. So he said, yes, we will work on a theme related to our core area, which has evolved. And I worked out a topic. The topic was on industry structure. Economics की background है कुछ लोगों की यहाँ. Some people have background of economics, अच्छा, economics का strategy का एक interface area है. So he said कि yes, you work on industry structure, और उस वक्त dry cell industry was a very popular industry in Ahmedabad. And he said work to that. I said fine. Let me go back to my institution, apply for leave, get leave, study leave, and I'll come back and join. So with this brief I came over. But as luck would have it, I was one of the youngest faculty member then, and two of my senior colleagues had already applied for leave. So chairman said कि भाई ऐसे कैसे काम चलेगा, department भी तो चलना है. So you can get it some other day, but not this. So I had to accept. So the second topic was also dropped. अच्छा, फिर जब when you are into research, तो ऐसा लगता है कि जब हम रिसर्च करके बाहर निकलेंगे तो हमारी रिसर्च से कुछ दुनिया में हंगामा हो जाए. Isn't it? You have this feeling. It will create ripples across the world. Isn't it? तो उस वक्त then I thought कि अब चलिए ये दो टॉपिक तो नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, थर्ड टॉपिक. और उस वक्त the IT industry was just coming up. So I said yes, I'll do something on IT industry. So I thought I'll study competitiveness in the IT industry. So that was my third. That was a very tough proposition. Why? Because in IT industry, things were changing so fast. So by the time you crystallize your research framework and come to the conceptual model, you find that the things have changed. So after trying for it for 6 odd months, I realized it's not working. So I requested my guide professor काजमी कि सर नहीं चल पा रहा है, तो बहुत मुश्किल हो रहा है. The landscape gets changed after every 6 months. अब इस बीच में I was due for promotion for the next, that is reader. By then my guide has become quite fed up with me, and he said कि ये कुछ कर नहीं पाएगा, and he was incidentally the chairman also. So when the time of my promotion came, he put a rider on my promotion. He in fact convinced the selection committee कि इसे घेरने का यही तरीका है कि इस पे तलवार लटका दो. And there was a rider put in my promotion that I have to complete my PhD during the period of probation. And if I don't complete, then my promotion will be at the discretion of the vice chancellor. So now तलवार लटक गई, अब तो कुछ करना ही करना था. So I then desperately searched for topic which I could complete in that 1 year's time which I was given. So that was the situation around which the fourth topic of research got crystallized. अच्छा, ये कैसे crystallize हुआ? Why I am sharing this journey with you? You know, you plan for your life, but life has its own plan. In fact, somebody wrote it beautifully and said, life is what happens to you when you are busy making other plans. So I experienced that. So what happened? Actually, when I was in IIM Ahmedabad, I met a person called Dr. Pestanji. Pestanji was, I mean, I have not till date come across a better colleague than him. He studied from class first to PhD in Aligarh. And he was a product of psychology department. And from here, after completing his PhD, he went to BHU. He joined psychology department there, and he became reader there. And then from there, he was picked up as L&T professor of organizational behavior in IIM Ahmedabad. So when I went there in 92, he became my godfather. Aligarh में एक senior junior वाला रिश्ता होता है, so he was my senior, and he would command me कि ये करो वो करो and all that. But his home became my second home there. So he was an authority on stress management. And often he would invite me to help him in conducting his workshops on stress management. So unconsciously, I had picked up those ideas. So I consulted him, sir, can we do research on this? He said, why not? I'll guide you. And it sounded simple also because the instruments were very well laid. You were just required to administer it to a group of respondents who, in your opinion, might be stressed. So I thought about it. I was discussing it with my co-brother who was into police service. He said, "Arey, police se अच्छा क्या होगा? They are all the time under stress. So you do it on. I will help you." So that is how the fourth topic. And trust me, I was able to conceive and deliver in 9 months. So the entire span, 3 months for conceptualization, 3 months for data collection, and finally 3 months for analysis, writing the results and all that. So my present assessment is if we are really into it, it's actually a 1 year's job. We may stretch it to, as there is a Peters principle in management which says, work expands to fill the time available. So I took 11 years. I should have taken 1 year only. But we all learn. So then how it has progressed beyond this. Why I am sharing this with you, if you get into a topic at this stage, which post PhD you can extend, that would be a wonderful scenario. Because as they say, PhD is the beginning of research, not the end of it. So how I extended my research beyond PhD, it was like this. After I completed my PhD, I applied to AICTE for a research grant, and I was fortunate, I got it. And there I was supposed to study 4 other occupational groups. I studied only police in the PhD stage. Later on, I extended it to public sector, to government sector, to universities. 4 occupational groups I can. So how was the spread now in terms of breadth? Then at some stage I realized, especially when I was looking at the profile of air traffic controllers. They were also experiencing, the job of air traffic controller is very, very challenging and very demanding. One mistake can cost dear. So when I compared my research with another research carried out in Delhi University by a fellow researcher Prabhat Mishra, I compared the two groups. In police, agar if you know a bit of statistics by now, you must have learned it. You have that standard deviation and you have that normal distribution curve. Generally, how it goes? Yes, it's a bell-shaped curve. So, can I use this? No. No whiteboard over here? Tell you. You can visualize. So, you have a bell-shaped curve which has outliers. Then you have people who are centering around the mean. So, what I noted that in air traffic controllers, the standard deviation was very close to the mean. In police personnel, it was quite spread out. मतलब ये था कि some people were heavily stressed and some people were having a gala time, not bothered at all. So then I got into this, what is the reason? In air traffic controllers, it is centering. So I then came to this realization that actually personality plays a very important role. Some people are more stress prone, others are not. Then my research actually got into a different direction. In terms of depth, I was exploring what actually negotiates this stress. And it was the personality which was actually playing a dominant. So then now more of my researches are into, seeing this interface between personality and stress. So that's one journey which I thought I can talk more authentically because it is my own. But now let me talk about a very, very interesting journey of this lady called Yasmin Saikia. As I said, she was my classmate in MA History here. And from here she went to US and she repeated her masters and then her research. And then she joined North Carolina University in Chapel, and then she went to Arizona State University. And when she was there she conducted this study, which is titled Women, War and Making of Bangladesh. She was from Assam, and Assam and Bangladesh, and there is a very close connection. So her own servant was a Bangla lady, and she was also aware of the all Assam, all student Assam agitation which took place over evicting Bengalis from Assam because they were cornering the benefit. So there was it was a period of great turmoil in Assam. Finally, Assam Gan Parishad came into power and all that. It was for pure Assam, doing away with Bangladesh. So she had that background, but her own father had studied in Dhaka University. So she had that connect also. She wanted to visit Dhaka once. This when she was exploring the history of this subcontinent, because she In Arizona State, she became a professor of the Southeast Asia. So South Asia covers all these continents, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and all that. So she was supposed to study this landscape. And she searched, there has been two catastrophic events in this, which we call Indian continent. In our parlance, Americans call it South Asia. So she said that 1947 was a great turmoil, and afterwards 1971 was the second period of turbulence in this South Asian history. Why? Because Pakistan was divided into two nations, that is East and West, and then Bangladesh emerged out of East Pakistan. So she thought that she will explore this history. And especially her interest was that she wanted to explore it from the point of view of, there is a movement in history. Is there a student of history over here? Nobody is. So, but in history, there are various schools of thought. One is Marxist school of thought, then nationalist school of thought. But there is another school of thought which is called social history. And they say that we have to interweave history through people's opinions and perspectives. They call it social history. So she said, I don't want to go with an official narrative. And the official narrative of Bangladesh, the creation of Bangladesh is West Pakistan was dominating us, and we had to secede from them. And India helped us in that journey. This is the official narrative. So she said, this sounds okay, but what was the deeper undercurrents which were there? And generally what happens is, in all social sciences, this is a phenomena which you will encounter, that people have an official narrative, dominant narrative, and the core of that narrative is, we are here, and then there is a group which is out there, which is not like us, and we have to detest them and build up our case so that they are, shown not in right perspective. So, for example, when a Bangladeshi would write a history, what they would say, there were those evil forces in West Pakistan. They were there to, create a discord or dominate us, and we overthrew their dominance. So history becomes more a kind of we and they kind of. So this was the dominant narrative, but she said there is more to it than what is visible. And then this research started. So her her research में क्या करते हैं? We identify research gaps. So her gap was, and she said, a catastrophic event has happened. How this event has affected the women of Bangladesh? This was her, because she could never locate hands on any study which has explored this issue. How women have experienced that war. And the what we call in formal research, we call it hypothesis. But if a hypothesis is not very firmed up, we have our own intuitive judgments. So her intuitive judgments was that often, victims are punished for the crime they never committed. They were just there at the wrong time, and they were made to suffer. So she undertook this research, and then she was able to unsurface this story of how women suffered during this war. So her findings are, one, Women sacrificed the most in the war, but they were never rewarded for this. In fact, in the next slide, I'll show you that it is estimated, governments estimate, that around 2 lakh women were raped during that period. But there is no official record, because this is something which is not talked about. There were not only outside forces which were at work, there were inside forces also, which were forcing them to remain silent. Then I'll talk about these outcomes that she inferred from it, but this is very important, which she realized when she interacted with this lady, Suhasini Devi. She was from Silhat, and she actually supported hundreds of women during that period. For example, helping them deliver their babies. The official stand was that those ladies who, as a result of rape, have got pregnant, after the war, it was decided that we should do away with any traces of Pakistani bastards. That was the term that was used. And as a result, these women were asked to undergo abortion, lest this evil influence continues to haunt them. So once for all, they have to remove any traces. Now you can imagine what kind of trauma it must have caused, especially women who were, for example, at that advanced stage of pregnancy. So this lady helped many such ladies to overcome that trauma, help them deliver babies, take care of them during this period. And her conclusion was that all women are brave because they endured such trauma and they emerged out stronger. In fact, in the same vein, she recorded in her book the work of Dr. Noor Jahan. He was an expert of gynecology, so, and she was with the government. So because it was government's brief, she helped them with this, what they call in medical parlance, medical termination of pregnancy, MTP. And in fact, in her testimony, she pointed out that on some days she may had to even, terminate 200 such pregnancies. And often these were performed in the rehabilitation center with less than hygienic facilities. But she was happy. She said, I could save lives of most of them. I would like you to read this story also, again of a survivor. His name was Major Farooq. He was with East Bengal Regiment, and as expected, the regiment revolted, and then he, along with some of his Bengali colleagues, they were caught by the Pakistani army in Chittagong. Somehow he ran away, despite he receiving gunshot. But the second para is equally distressing, which is he joined Mukti Bahini as it was created, and with the help of actually Indian government, Indian army, this Mukti Bahini played a key role in the liberation of Bangladesh. He was actually conferred the title also. He was awarded, but later on the same fellow was classified as anti-state agent because it was thought that he had played a role in assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and so his final comment was that I have survived the Pakistani army, but I was hunted by my own people, and said doesn't make any sense anymore. So why I am narrating this, and what are the implications of this research in setting our own agenda? It's a very, very disturbing read. If some of you have an interest, I would suggest that do read this book, Women, War and the Making of Bangladesh, where she has recorded all these testimonies. But I want to tell you the other side of the story also, because she was in a fortunate position to look at the other side also. In 2004, her grant for Bangladesh was over, and her interest was aroused in this fact: what happened to those who committed these crimes? And the major charge was against Pakistani army, although there were charges against Indian army also, which went inside, that they also resorted to looting, but it was far less. Main charge was against the Pakistani army. So she got another research grant, and that way she went to Pakistan, contacted some of those people who were there in the army, both rank and file as also the senior officer. And she has recorded their testimony also. So the strange part of the entire story is that these people who had perpetrated those crimes, they after the war had become a nervous wreck. Many of them held deep guilt. Many of them left the army and wished that they had an opportunity to apologize. So that's another side of the story. In fact, based on this research, this lady, Dr. Yasmin Saikia, she was offered the professorship in Arizona. She was a professor of history, but then she was offered this position of professor of peace. Because her core was that ultimately in war, everybody is a loser. Even those who apparently claim to be victors are actually losers. I read a couplet which puts it very powerfully. It says कि ये सच कि तुमने सच कहा, कुछ देर तक बिस्मिल तड़पता है, पर उसके बाद सारी जिंदगी कातिल तड़पता है. In the end, apparently the victors suffer the most because they live with that guilt. Based on this, now, how do we set our research agenda? अब आप देखिए, मैंने जो आपको रिसर्च डिस्क्राइब की, it apparently falls in the category of a subject discipline we call history. But is there only history in it? Is it not psychology? Is it not right kind of education? Is it not gender justice? Isn't it? So this is one thing which we need to realize, that as a social science researcher, we may be belonging to a particular discipline, but social problems cuts across the discipline. And unless we have that broad angle to look at the issues, we shall not be able to, do full justice to our research. I have a friend who was my hostel mate, and we were side room partners, so we were good friends. But his subject was law, and then he made it big and became vice chancellor of a law university. In fact, he served three law universities as vice chancellor. His name is there in the panel of AMU also. So once he was narrating how he has grown as a legal researcher, he said, we had strong grounding in social science. We are taught by people like Irfan Habib, history, political science. We had some best teachers who groomed us in social science. And from there, then we picked up our law. So this is one implication for us to grow as a researcher in this. We cannot be narrow focused, tunnel visioned, and looking at every phenomena from our own angle only. Yeah, I'm a mass communications researcher. So I have identified a few problems based on this study which I have shared with you. Do you see traces of this in the research which I have described to you? Hmm? As a researcher, does this question bother us? As human beings, can't we live together? Why we class the other person, which leads to such consequences which Yasmin has described? And story is not yet over. Bangladeshis are doing the same thing on Biharis in Bangladesh. And Bihari is not a regional term there. Biharis are all Urdu speaking people. And the kind of ghettoization she has seen there, that is worse than what she has witnessed, what has happened with Bengali women. That's another sad story. So this, because we are witnessing an increase of such trends. Political polarization. As a result of it, we tend to divide society in terms of we and they. And then the ultimate manifestation of it is a war in which maybe 15,000 people are killed, including children. Then this entire issue of, I think rest of the issues are clear to you, but ethics and social responsibility, this is a very important issue. and I explain it in the context of Yasmin's research only. Should you use the real names of the victims? But she was, she was very, it was a heartening experience for her that there was a lady who said, use my real name. I want this, the world to know this. Nobody has come to listen to my story. You have come to listen, and I want you to tell the world this story. So you have to use your judgment as a researcher, where you should describe the events in an impersonal manner without bringing the person in the limelight, and where you have to. Now, whatever the commitment she had with this, that is her subjective commitment. They would not come to question her. But as a social science researcher, we not be concerned about these ethical issues. So, in the light of this, and this is what I have pointed out, that social science research, especially, actually it cuts across all the disciplines. Now, I would like you to do a simple exercise. I have identified 5 such issues. Can you identify some more issues which are researchable? Especially after listening to this research effort which I have described, are there some more issues which ought to be our concern? And maybe we can take a 5 minutes break, and the groups are already sitting like groups. You can just do one thing. You can turn the direction of the chair, and this becomes one group. Okay, please turn the direction of the chair. Likewise, you can form a group, and your job is to identify issues other than these which I have already identified from the same research, or maybe a research problem which you are contemplating presently. But my point is, it should be meaningful. It should have that capability to be extended both in terms of depth as also breadth. So, can we form this as one of the group, and you 5 can sit together? Okay. You have roughly around 5 to 6 minutes to deliberate and come up with list of the issues. Why don't you turn the direction of the chair? Huh? Likewise, you can also, it may be a bit difficult, but better not like this. एक मिनट रुकिए. Likewise, you can. आप भी रिसर्चर को बहुत फ्लेक्सिबल होना पड़ता है. Can you get up, please? एक मिनट please. ऐसा आ जाइए. Yes, that will be better. I would suggest that we read human development reports that are brought out each year. And each year has a theme, particular theme. And you know, human development, the entire movement, how it was started by UNDP. So there are core issues which they started with, which is education, livelihoods, and health. Isn't it? And then the issues have been expanded. For example, in one of the HDR, the core issue was health, but they were talking about this COVID, for example, is one issue which we have faced. So now displacement, environmental refugees, that has become a major concern. So if you go back to the core issues, actually, you will find that we live in an extremely unequal world. This is the core of the problem if you go into the divide which exists between the developed north and the less developed south. And it seems, in fact, I would wish that we get an occasion to read a book by John Perkins. He wrote a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And he details out how America and Western world together, primarily America, establishes its domination over the third world. That book, in fact, he visited a country after 25 years, after his recommendations were already implemented there, and he saw the devastation. And then his conscience was aroused and he quit that job and he wrote that book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And there he pointed out that actually there is a war which is already going on. Some wars are visible, some wars are not, because they are fought silently. So for example, the job of this hitman was that he was supposed to go to a country as an expert, consultant, who is there to help them estimate the forecast. For example, for any development, the major thing which would be required is energy. So he was supposed to predict the requirement, energy requirement of that particular region. And his brief was, if the requirement is X, he has to project it as 3X. Now what will be the impact of that? The impact of that would be, you would require huge investments to create those kind of energy setups, whether it is hydro or it is, coal based or whatever. And then from where those funds would come to finance that development? It would come from IMF, it would come from World Bank. From where the technology would be acquired? Naturally, from the developed world, who has the technology. So you are using your development, in the name of your development, they are apparently helping you with funds, technology, but actually there is a cycle of domination in that. In fact, I was reading in an article that if every consumer starts consuming the way an American consumer does, we need 3 planets to sustain that standard of living. So everything, to me, my understanding is everything boils down to that level, the inequalities that exist in it. And the one who is already in a blessed position maintains that, either through the soft means or through hard means, which includes war. In fact, John Perkins pointed out 3 strategies. One was this economic domination. The second was, if a country still insists, okay, we will go by our own indigenous methods. Then they, can you close the door please? Then they encourage splinter groups. Every society has some disgruntled elements, so they finance them and they create a kind of internal rebellion by financing such groups. And even, and suppose the nationalist government is very strong and curbs such rebellions, then the third level strategy is resorted, and that is direct war. And we have seen countries being destroyed on pretext like, they have weapons of mass destruction and all. But the core is this urge to dominate. So just look at these issues. The core has emerged from that. We live in an unequal world. So as social scientists, can we contribute our bit in at least understanding the issues that we are faced with? And when we work on those issues, no one methodology would work. I think these points I have been discussing with you, I would highlight some of them over here. Can you read it? Now, if we set out to work on such issues, one of the core challenges is data availability. Yasmin had described in her book the kind of challenges that she faced before she was able to get hold of the first person to interview. She was discouraged tooth and nail. She searched for the government records. She said, if such a crisis has happened, there should be some government records. She checked public records, she checked FIR's records, and she could not lay her. When 2,002 lakh people have suffered, there should be some record somewhere. And finally, but she persisted, and finally she was able to get hold of one person who was ready to testify, and from there the chain started, and it led to, she approaching at least 50 such survivors. So data availability and accessibility is a very crucial issue, although we all say that now data is available at the click of the button. But that may not be the data which you need, because that may be the data which is being used to establish their domination. I already talked about the dominant narrative. So there is already a dominant narrative in place. And actually we have to use these mixed methods. Initially she went for public records, National Archives of Bangladesh. She was doing that research only, collecting data, quantitative data. But the real insight she got only when she started interviewing people, the victims who had suffered. So we have to use a mixed approach. Participating research, this is a very difficult position, but if somebody can do it, I would wish that some of you get an occasion to read a book called City of Joy by Larry Collins. There were two authors of that book, Freedom at Midnight. Larry Collins was one of them. Later on, he wrote this book, City of Joy. He actually came and lived in a leper's colony in Calcutta, which was called Anand Nagar. Including, 6 months he stayed in that colony. Then he wrote that book, City of Joy. So for getting genuine insights, maybe we have to even get down to that level. Then big data and computational science, you know, this has become the in thing, and we say that through social media we generate a lot of data, and if we can develop this ability to analyze that data, that would be a wonderful source of insight. Like somebody wants to do a research on delinquent behavior. Our own Vice Chancellor, General Zamiruddin Shah, when the Wi-Fi was introduced and he wanted to study the pattern of its use, he found that now it peaks at 2 a.m. in the night, the use of Wi-Fi in the hospital. And only after 3:30 it drops down. And then till 11 there is no activity. So we can draw a lot of inferences from this pattern of use. Yes, global what Saikia has done, this study can be repeated in all conflict zones. It has a potential. Then we understand the psychology of those who are trying to dominate. Can we, and you know, the research gets interesting when we have contrary examples also. For example, we witnessed the same conflict in South Africa. But South Africa has learned to stay together as a nation. So should we not study that? There was a serious conflict. A person who was heading a conflict, heading a marginalized group, was jailed for 27 years. And he comes out of the jail and ends up uniting the nation. As opposed to another conflict zone, the Central Asia, where the USSR disintegrated. It was balkanized. Now you have two conflict zones. One who learned to live together and one who could not stay together and finally parted ways. We have example of Berlin Wall falling within this our own lifetime. And you have North Korea and South Korea. So it's an interesting field of inquiry because we have varied examples. Yes, and there is a scope for replication. Something which has already been done at a place, we change the context. This is a very useful step because especially for the PhD level work, because the methodology is already well laid. You have just Yasmin at that stage had to crystallize her own methodology. She just approached the place with an open mind. She had no methodology in place. It evolved. But in replication, you have a methodology in place. And many a times, we get stuck in our research because of methodological issues. So replication could be a very good step. Then, yes, I have already told you about the issues of ethics and social response. As a social science research, we cannot, turn a blind eye to those issues. And I have already pointed out the need for a kind of interdisciplinary approach. So I end on this, the last slide that I have. देखिए सोशल साइंस रिसर्च का पर्पस जो है, I will use my own language, and I'll help you to translate it for a friend from Kerala. You are from Kerala? देखिए, रिसर्च का मकसद खबर देना भी और खबरदार करना. We have to inform, but we also need to advise, suggest the way out. So if both the purposes are served, then only the meaningful research is done. So I end on a slightly lighter note. There was an explorer who went with a group of people to explore an island. And then when they were sitting on a day, having a campfire, he announced, he said, I have a good news and I have a bad news. The good news is we are making great strides. We are far ahead of our target. But the bad news is we are lost. So that is what has happened with social science. We have made great strides in methodology. हमारे एक बहुत एक्सपीरियंस रिसर्चर कहते हैं कि वो SEM के बाद जो वो गुच्छा अंगूर का गुच्छा आता है वो कहाँ है. We have learned to manipulate our data enough. And as somebody said, if you torture data long enough, it will confess to any crime. Isn't it? So the situation is like that. But is it so that we are actually lost? So that's my last slide. Do you have any question or?
क्राफ्टिंग ए मीनिंगफुल जर्नी, वंडरफुल डिस्कशन. देखिए बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं बात करने की.
In fact, they already had a participative break in between. So they came out with some very useful ideas.
तीनों ही वर्ड्स एक रिसर्चर के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी हैं. क्राफ्टिंग, द वर्ड हैज़ बीन टेकन फॉर डिज़ाइनिंग. अब देखिए सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है बिफोर यू हाउ टू डिज़ाइन योर रिसर्च. यहीं पे वी आर लॉस्ट. नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स द स्कॉलर्स, माफ़ करिएगा सर 2 मिनट के लिए बैठे. नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स स्कॉलर्स यूज टू अप्रोच एट द टाइम ऑफ एनालाइजिंग द डेटा. Earlier stages already lost. They have lost themselves at the stage of planning. They lost themselves at the stage of designing. They lost themselves at the stage of gathering. तो एनालाइजिंग में क्या मिलेगा? Crafting a meaningful. The sir has tried to give you the message to be meaningful in your research. You need to be systematic, you need to be orderly. ये सारी कोशिश इसीलिए कि how to conduct a research, how to frame the questions, how to frame the hypothesis, how to generate the numbers through observation or measurement, and how to play with numbers. And journey, of course, अगर academician बनना है, researcher बनना है, तो फिर इस रास्ते पे तो चलना ही होगा. Thank you so much sir for the wonderful discussion. Friends, I appeal you please, ये मौका है, पूछिए सर से, बात करिए. पूरी ज़िंदगी पूरी उम्र लग गई है यहाँ तक आने में, कम ही ये मौके मिलते हैं. आई एम श्योर कि आप लोग थके हुए हैं, लेकिन आप लोग जवान हैं, यंग हैं, दैट यू कैन. पूछे, अभी जवान नहीं है हम तो बुढ़े हो रहे हैं, मिडिल एज ओल्ड मैन. थैंक यू सो मच सर फॉर गिविंग अस द टाइम सर. Thank you, friends. See you tomorrow. Some more discussions. And today, I am in a position to share all the links of the YouTube recorded videos. थोड़ा delay हुआ. I am sorry for it. You know, number of editing and issues were there. एक ही video around 40 GB का है, तो you can imagine कि we have limitation of the space also. So anyhow, we have been able to manage this, and you will enjoy the classes. सर की क्लास भी, सर आपका भी मैं शेयर करूँगा. जी जी, PPT along with the video recording versions to your students, to your researchers. Thank you so much. So have wonderful evening.